I see a huge disconnect with the medical system and the health world, really. I was feeling super conflicted because I was in a space where I was a super sleep-deprived mum. My son was going through all of these food intolerances. I had no idea what I was kind of doing, but I knew the path that I was on felt really disaligned because he was getting prescribed these heavy steroid creams and medications that I'm like, this baby's body should not be having this. But I also knew at that time, I'm like, but these people are professionals and I'm not a professional. I was trusting that with it also feeling disaligned. So it was almost trying to find this middle ground again. I still need to trust in that because there's going to be moments that I need that. But I also need to find a way that feels more in alignment with me so that if we do have to rely on, say, steroids or that sort of stuff for his health, I know I've done everything in my power from a more holistic approach to avoid that from happening. My struggle was with the disconnect, and I had doctors, people say to me like, we can't trust a nutritionist, like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I really believe that food is medicine. Like it really can help us and fix us.
Or you do trust your nutrition, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's who you trust.
Totally.
But also, at what point did you have the courage to lean into your intuition around that?
Yeah.
And again, I don't believe our intuition, especially as mothers, is ever wrong.
Totally
Yet
agree.
we can be persuaded to do things that maybe aren't in alignment. I would say in my experience of watching and being a mother myself, but watching a lot of mothers also as a practitioner, they will always say, I should have trusted my gut.
And I think that's the point I got to. Like I remember having this real moment where I was like, whoa, this is so far removed from how I would have ever expected myself or thought that I would manage or handle this situation. How can I just pull it in a little bit? Just trust that intuition a little bit more. That actually started with just getting a nutritionist. Then we had results from that. So it was almost that confidence again to be like, okay, maybe I can go a little bit further with this and I can trust this a little bit more. The more that you start to build that evidence that your intuition is actually leading you in the right place. As a mum, it actually never fails you. But sometimes we just need those little pieces of evidence to give us the confidence to keep moving towards those intuitive pulls.
I had a great quote, and I'm going to probably mishmash it, but it was something about health shouldn't be a debate. It really should be what you want to do. I don't believe it should be a this or a that. Yeah. It's just how you choose to actually follow your path. But how often do we find ourselves feeling like we're conflicted? Sometimes when we're sleep deprived, I don't know how smart we are. And I think that's where the variables can happen, or we can make decisions that actually aren't in alignment. But that doesn't mean that we can't redecide or reconsider or, reassess the situation at some point in time.
Now I really try to not let myself hold any guilt on that journey. My son has been diagnosed since with asthma, and we had a really scary experience with that. And I remember being in the hospital and just saying to myself, I need to know next time this happens that I've done everything in my power that is in alignment and listen to my intuition. If we get into this point again, at least I know I've given everything that I believe is right to do a try. We are doing those more holistic things now, and I don't want to jinx anything, but it's going really well.
But I think what you get to do is you get to continue to build the foundation.
Definitely.
We've got a lot of access to great things that help a symptom, but when we come back in and we build the foundation, the symptoms become less and less.
Yes.
And it's less of a reactive approach, but it is scary, especially first times of anything like that when you don't know.
I remember almost giving myself permission for it to feel really hard too. Like this is allowed to feel hard, and it's allowed to feel not fair because it was also new to me and I hadn't experienced that as a mum either.
We're all learning too. Kids, they don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially first time around the block. Second time, third time, fourth child, I don't know. I don't have 4 children. I only have 2. But I imagine.
Totally. You're a super mum.
At that point, I think they just take care of each other, don't they?
So true. I actually remember a quote a friend said to me when I was just expressing to her a few things that I'm like, I'm really big on reflection. I'm really big on self-reflection. And I said to her, I just feel like sometimes I have these expectations and then certain things in motherhood or maybe decisions I made haven't met up to that. And she said to me, have you ever heard the quote, expectations are literally the thief of joy? And I was like, no, I haven't, but I really like that. And that is so true in my motherhood journey.
I think that's very important. I tend to joke about myself because I have no expectations, and sometimes it's just not something that's even occurs to me, right?
Yes.
So someone will say, I went and watched that movie. It was terrible. I expected, and I'm like, am I that like daft that I don't have any expectations that I'm like, we were expecting more, were we? I never have expectations. expectations. And maybe it does make life, I don't know how else to live because I don't.
Yes.
I don't know. I can fully say to you, try it on.
Yeah. And I really think that it would be such a more enjoyable process
Well,
for you.
I just kind of go, I don't have expectations on people. Like I don't have expectations of situations. Is it because I'm just bland? I don't know. I used to really struggle when people used to say I've got expectations to be like, oh, hang on a minute. Am I supposed to have an expectation here? It's just something I don't have. I have plenty of other things that are challenges. But
I love that.
You know, it's quite interesting.
It is. And I actually really learnt this on my first trip when I went to Europe when I was 21. So like all those years of you finish high school, saving for my first big Europe trip, went overseas with my best friend, and the expectation, like it was so high. This was going to be the most life-changing trip ever. And I kept a journal. So I actually have looked back on that 1 week into the trip. It's just like it had not met one bit of those expectations yet. And it was such a huge lesson for me at 21 to be like, remove the expectations. And I feel like from a life perspective and for my 20s, I really did. Like I removed every expectation and I just fully lived for the moment. And it's like the joy then after that trip that came with traveling and my career and the circles that I got myself in, I was like, this is just so abundant all of the time. Unfortunately, I didn't apply that when it came to motherhood. And motherhood was one of those things that I always saw myself as a mum. And I think I always had this expectation of what it would look like and what it would feel like, whether I never saw myself as a career woman or the person that had this super thriving, fulfilling career. All of a sudden I had no expectation here and this was feeling so good, but I had all this expectation here and it was feeling so hard.
You don't know what you don't know until you actually start to go, hang on, what are we expecting? What am I missing? Is there nothing in here? Like, I don't know.